Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the See, I did it again. Welcome to the Hope Experience podcast. My name is Stephen. We're in the Arctic Hope Igloo. We have in studio the one, the only, Alyssa Flaherty-Spence. Alyssa Flaherty-Spence is an up-and-coming leader, really a leader in your own right, if I could take a liberty in saying that. We've known each other now since 2010.
Yes. So almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years. Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Alyssa Flaherty, if I could just read your thing there. She's a special advisor to the Commissioner Kayak Robinson, the National Inquiry to Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, legal policy advisor to ITK, which is a huge accomplishment, I think. Director of Youth Outreach for the Changing Lives Through Law, formerly Canadian Lawyers Abroad. This is a lawyer. She's passed her bar exam. A lot of accomplishments for someone who is under 100. So I think this is a great time to really just get to know you a little bit. Hope. We have to look at hope and say lives can really come from anything is possible in our lives.
Yep.
And I think in many ways Alyssa is kind of an example of that. We've both grown up here in Ottawa. We're both Indigenous. I'm Scottish, and Inuk. You're Inuk and Cree, yes. Right? Yeah. And so we're Indigenous here, and this is a great time, I think, to be proud of who we are and where we come from.
For sure.
So, Alyssa, without further ado, welcome to the Arctic Hope Igloo.
Thank you so much.
Now, have you been in the igloo before?
I think I have. I must have, for sure.
I think, if we could start with the story of you being kind of stranded.
Right.
And almost, you almost died at least once.
Yep.
Most of the flights we've been on in the Arctic, I think
they're a little rough.
Oh, man, every time I think this could be it for us. We're going up to your mother's hometown community, Grise Fiord, the very top of Canada. We're going there in a couple of weeks. I don't know if we'll make it back.
You will.
We will.
I'm sure you will.
But you were living in, you grew up here in Ottawa, grew up in Almont, which is the Toronto Raptors now, where we're killing it.
Yes, Almont is the James Naismith, who is the inventor of basketball, is from there. So
do you know where what street he was? Oh,
yes,
wow.
They have it into I think it's a museum now, or I think it's a historical building for sure.
Right.
Yeah, and they have statues of James Naismith around the town.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Someone told me, and I don't know if this is true or not, but someone told me that one of the Toronto Raptors is from Almont.
Oh, he could be.
Yeah.
I'm not sure though.
Yeah, because then that's probably not it. Because I would think that someone from Almont who's in the Raptors, Toronto Raptors.
Yeah.
I think everyone would know who this person is.
For
so
sure.
Probably not then. So you're from Almont. You lived and worked in Iqaluit for how long was that?
Well, after my undergrad, I moved back up north because I wanted to. Like you said, I grew up in Ottawa, in the outskirts of Ottawa in Almont, and after my undergrad, I wanted to do something up north, so go back. My majority of my mother's side of the family is in Iqaluit, so I wanted to go back, and my original plan was to live there for only the summer.
I see.
For 4 months.
Right.
And then I ended up staying there for about almost 3 years.
Wow.
And then thereafter, in law school, I went back every summer to do some work.
Huh.
Yeah.
And so there was during that time that you went out on the land,
Yes.
like a picnic, or what happened?
Yeah, so initially, it was the first week that I moved up. It was, I think, around the Easter weekend. And
so still quite cold.
Still cold up there, right?
Yeah.
It was spring, so it was beautiful out. That's the perfect time to go fishing. And we went out on the Sunday. I started work, I think it was on the Tuesday. We went out fishing on the Sunday. And now that I look back, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have gone out on the land on Sunday. Sunday is not really traditionally the day that you go hunting, the day you fish. It's supposed to be a day of rest, right? So,
and even a day where people are coming home from their camping.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So that already in itself, some would say that it wasn't a good idea to go out. And then So we went out. I was lucky enough to have family that took me under their wing and took me out. We went fishing about an hour and a half, 2 hours, Sylvia Grinnell Lake.
Okay.
So we went out there during the day.
And you went out by Skidoo?
Skidoo, yes. Okay. Skidoo. And it was still cold. There was still snow, like, not cold in maybe in some sense, but we left, we skidooed out there, and we're out there all day, and it was a beautiful day.
Right.
And we didn't catch anything. I don't think we caught anything, but on the way back that's when it all started. And what happened was there was a miscommunication with me and my cousin Lavinia, who were on one skidoo. Lavinia was the one driving.
And she's from...
she grew up in Grease Fjord.
Oh, wow.
But now she's living in Kuujjuaq, Nunavik. So, and my other cousin, Andrea, she was also there with us, and she was on a separate skidoo. And the plan was we wanted to go back to town early. So we were all going to go back in the two skidoos together. What happened was Lavinia and I went to go drop off some of the tools in a separate area, fishing area that we borrowed. And Andrea, I think, went to use the washroom, and then we were all going to meet back in one spot. Didn't happen. And we thought Andrea was already taken off. So we started going. And she wasn't. So
And there's no, like, cell phone service out there. There's no way to communicate.
Phone, no, we didn't have a GPS, which we should have. We didn't have a spot, which we should have. And so we started driving, and we were on tracks, and it was nice out, and still daylight. And we were driving, and then I think probably about an hour in, I had this gut feeling that something wasn't right.
Yikes. And how scary is that gut feeling? Like, is that...
It didn't kick in until she stopped the skidoo. She stopped the skidoo, and she looked at me, and I can tell on her face and her tone, she said, I don't know where Andrea... Like, I don't know where we are. And you hear about people in the north that have gone missing.
All the time.
All the time because of the severity of the weather change.
Yep.
How it could be... You could be so isolated, right? Yeah. And... it's very important that you have a spot or a GPS with you.
Right.
It is. I can't stress that enough. It's. You can get lost in the Arctic within seconds, really fast.
Well, and like a lot of people don't understand that, like, there's no trees.
No.
And, I guess there are kind of, like in Iqaluit, the region there is, mountain, hill peaks and that, so some things are familiar.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's very easy to get lost.
For sure, and I think it's more easy to get lost when you don't know the land.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I grew up in Ottawa. Like I said, I wasn't born and raised in Iqaluit or Grease Fjord, so I don't know the lay of the land. Whereas elders and people who are hunters, they know the land more than anyone, and they even though, sometimes someone may get lost, but for the majority, they are the ones that do know the land.
Yeah.
But for those who don't, you can get lost really quick.
So you two get lost.
Yes.
And stop the machine.
Yeah.
And so did the weather stay?
So the weather changed after the machine later on died. So we started walking, and because we were on trails, and trails were still visible because at that time of year, the daylight still continues pretty late.
Yeah.
So we thought maybe town is just around the corner, like maybe it's just over that plateau. So we started walking on the trail, thinking we were close, because at that time we were driving for probably at least an hour and a half. And we were walking all night, and I think it was Monday morning when the blizzard hit, and it hit...
You're walking all night?
All night.
Whoa!
Yeah, so we would stop, kind of rest, keep going, and keep in mind we didn't really have anything to eat.
Yeah.
We had a couple things, but
it was just like a Sunday afternoon picnic.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then the weather changed really dramatically, really quick, and we had to go... Because there's no trees, there's no shelters. We had to go beside a rock and dig ourselves beside a rock. The rock was probably max 4 feet.
Wow.
And so we huddled together
And did you have like proper clothes? Like, were you warm? Like,
we were warm, and that is thanks to our family.
Yeah, right.
Before we left, they said, "Nope, you got to wear this. You got to wear this. You got to wear this." And
so you weren't like in like skinny jeans or.
No,
No.
definitely not. And it's not any like Canada Goose jacket. You're gonna be wearing like a full down parka. You're not gonna be wearing a skinny Canada Goose jacket.
Yeah. No, you're there to just in case for scenarios exactly like this. Wow.
Yeah. So we laid behind the rock for about 12 hours, I'm gonna say, and there was times where I think that was one of the hardest moments that time, and when we were walking on the third day.
3 days.
Yeah, the third day.
Wow. See, like anyone listening or watching, we've never had this conversation. I knew kind of peripherally. I remember like on Facebook, there were a few people were saying like, "Oh, please pray for Alyssa and her cousin." Mm-hmm. They, this is the second day. Yeah. Right, but we've never actually
had a conversation about this. Yeah, so it was 3 days, 2 nights. So it was going on the third night.
And was there a blizzard at one point, or?
So that was the second. So that was the second day. The second day, the Monday, was the blizzard, and that's when we stood. Yikes. We laid behind the rock for a bit, for 12 hours, and then that was like, I remember Lavinia being beside me, and the blizzard was so loud and so powerful. The winds were so powerful. I remember having to tap her on the side, and she would tap me back to make sure we were both still alive.
Gee whiz.
Yeah. So that was hard. And then finally, like, we lost mitts at that time. Like, we thought we heard things as well. Like, we thought we heard helicopters at one point. We'd stand up, start waving. No, there was nothing there. And so after the blizzard stopped, we kept walking. But at that point, there's no trails. Yeah, trails are gone, right? Yeah. So we don't know where to go. We have no GPS, no cell phone. So at this point, your survival instincts kick in.
Yeah.
Really quick.
In a real way.
Yeah.
Man alive. Like, there's been a couple times where Braid and I get stuck in a community in the hotel with restaurants and food and just knowing that, like, the weather's kicked in and, we're going to be stuck a few days. We get into despair mode pretty fast, and all the travels we did last year. I know the feeling
because it's smaller community.
Yeah, and we both love the South. We love Ottawa, and I love being able to hop in my vehicle and just go.
You also just love to be at home with your family, right?
Well, like, exactly.
Anybody who's traveling anywhere, if you're stuck there, you kind of at one point just want to go home.
Like one of our board members went to Nain, Labrador, and while he was there, the weather got real bad. His mother died on this, like at the beginning of this trip, and he said, "Look, I'll make the funeral." Missed his mother's funeral because the weather got so nasty.
Yeah.
And so like the weather is a real factor.
Yeah, and it's a real factor, and it's a factor in many ways. It's a factor in like your travel, how your food is going to make it to town, if you're going to have supplies to town. And that's the reality of, and you kind of just go with it. But this was a different situation. Yeah. And
not to like, not to be coy or anything, but was there actually any moments where you thought like, this is it?
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
So we ended up sleeping behind another rock the second night,
and sleeping behind rocks is the only way to do it, right?
There's no trees. There's no nothing like.
You just barricade. You figure out where the wind is, and then
exactly. And so, the third day was that's when I started like really losing hope. Honestly,
no kidding.
Like it was, and I reflect back and it's I'm thinking like 3 days, like that's not even that long, but it is when you have no food, you have no water, and the thing is you don't know where you are. And that, I think, is the scariest feeling because you're out of control. You have no control of where you are in the universe and in the world.
Yeah.
You don't know if people are looking for you. You don't know what's going on with your family. And I think that was the day where I started to really lose hope. And I was walking, and I remember Lavinia being in front of me, and I was following her, and I would fall because the wind and the snow would bunch up in my hair, and I had goggles on, but my neck was so sore because my head was down from the snow.
Probably like a few pounds of frozen.
Yeah, frozen all over your body, like the snow compacted.
Wow.
Keep in mind we were on the ground, right? For the nights. So that wasn't really like we had to do that, and we had to. So I was walking behind her and I'd fall and she'd say, "Get up, we're going home." And I think those were probably like really, really tough moments. Like,
man alive.
I thought about my parents and my family, and I think those are the hardest times where you reflect back, and it's not necessarily me that's worried for myself. It's me that's worried for what's going to happen to my family and how are they going to feel about if I don't make it, right? So it's like it's almost like I kind of think about it when someone's terminally ill.
Yeah, right.
And they are almost okay with,
you
know, passing on. And I was in that state of mind, and I got to that point. But it was more so worrying about my family and my how are they going to make it, and my parents. But luckily, we were able to be found. So
like your cousin then, the one that you were supposed to be meeting up, thought went into town.
Yeah.
Where did she go? Was she also lost?
She was actually still in the fishing area, but she was in a different area, I think, where people were. So she was still there, and so she was with the other people that were at the, because she didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't find us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
So we met each other in 2010 at the Olympics in Vancouver. We were both among the Aboriginal Indigenous dancers for the opening ceremonies. Yes. That was quite a moment. Yeah. And we hadn't met each other before then.
No.
No. What high school did you go to in Ottawa?
So I didn't go to, like I said, I grew up in Almont. So Almont,
right,
I went to the Almont High School, and that was about 500 people. Like, it's not a big high school. Like, the population there is 7,000. So your high school is pretty small. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to Brookfield High School, and when I first started in grade 9, there was about 1,500, total, and then
which is still small.
Yeah, that's not a big high school.
No.
I
mean, for Ottawa standards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because there are a couple of high schools that were in around 18, close to 2,000. So yeah, when I finished, so we were in and around 900, which was really, at that point in time, there was even talk of the high school closing down. And so yeah, 2010, we're both in Vancouver. Had you done any Inuit cultural dancing before that?
No, I like here and there, but not a whole lot. I've done dancing before, but culturally, not so much. And I think it was my mom my parents were the ones that pushed me.
Same.
And I was like, but is this really my place,
Yeah, right.
But as a parent, now I can reflect back. And if I was in the position of my parents, I would for sure encourage myself to do that, You
have no idea what you're doing at 19, 20 years old.
No.
And that's where I really, same thing. My mom was like, fill out the paperwork.
Yeah.
Like, Mom, I don't have, they want cultural clothing. They want sealskin pants. Yeah. And kamiks. I'm like, I don't have any of that. Yeah. She's like, that is not the
That's not the problem. Yeah. We'll figure that out.
And I'm like, Mom, I don't know how to drum dance. They want me to drum dance. And she's like, no, just, you're going to go. Yeah. And so it was a guy from Joe Haven, Marvin, one of the Starvin Marvin. He taught me how to drum dance there in Vancouver. Yeah. I saw him last summer. We were up in Joe Haven, and he took us around four-wheeling, and we saw a couple snowy owls, and it was great to see him. Yeah. But yeah, so when I think obviously met each other there, had quite the experience. Maybe we could talk about it at some point in the podcast, just what the opening ceremonies is like, but. There's not too many people in Canada where you could say, hey, we did that together. Yes. We saw all of the athletes. We were dancing for 2.5 hours, an audience
non-stop.
Of some... Yeah, nonstop. That's the thing people don't realize. There was commercial breaks on CBC, for the opening ceremonies, but it was 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
I remember them telling us that they had paramedics at every one of the entryways.
Just in case someone would pass out or
especially the Inuit, because a couple of guys from Kuujjuaq, they had polar bear jackets on.
Yeah, my mother had a Inuvialuit style sunbeam
Yeah.
parka. So she gave that to me. And it's a beautiful parka.
It really is.
But it's hot in the like those are made for inside an arena. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then like not especially for dancing.
Yeah.
When it's not, freezing cold outside. It was about 20 degrees in there,
yeah. It was quite the experience. Like it was beautiful. It was at that age, those are vital times in your life where it allows you, those opportunities allow you to become so proud of your culture, proud of who you are.
Yeah.
And I think that was a pivotal moment, one of them in my life, where it connected you more to your culture.
Right.
And to your people and to Inuit. It was a privilege to be part of that. And sometimes I think, well, it could have been someone else. But I was very privileged and very happy to be a part of that. And I think it changes you as especially as an Inuk person. It really made you proud of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I had the same question of, hey man, am I the right person to be going?
Yeah.
I didn't. I learned how to drum dance there.
Exactly. And that's I think that's amazing. Like you learning from Marvin was in itself an experience, and that's what also it's part of. Like that's what this opportunity allowed is youth to become proud of their culture, not just taking the ones that already know how to drum dance, but at that moment you're allowing youth to discover themselves in their cultural identity. Right? So I think it was key just as much to have you there to learn to drum dance and to be part of that.
Well, and it was at a crazy platform, like it was a world stage where our cultures were showcased as to the first peoples in Canada.
Yeah.
And I was really quite honored to be there. But also, like, I remember my cousin who had gone through like he grew up in the north. He was hunting, he went to NS, and I remember the same thing, like, dude, you got to fill this paperwork. Let's go together. This is going to be an awesome time. Never did.
Yeah.
And I thought afterwards, like, on paper, he's far more qualified to be there than I am. But I also thought, like, well, it's just whoever shows up.
Yeah.
Like, whoever shows up to the table and says, let's do something.
Yeah.
And, so kind of to bring it all full circle, I when I saw on Facebook that you had been missing, I mean, we really got to calling, we got to praying, we got to saying, like, look, whatever help this girl needs, man, let's get it to her.
Yeah. That means a lot, because sometimes I look back and I say, I wasn't around when everyone was thinking about us, thinking and praying for us. So it's special to me to hear those things, and I don't take it for granted that people were thinking about us and praying for us at that moment.
Like, there's not many people that have had those real experiences of, like, there's just we're seconds away from the end here.
Yeah.
Did that change you because you were 23 or 24?
Yeah, I was in my early 20s, and it did. It definitely changed my perspective. It provided me a appreciation for life and just the fact that we're sitting here in a, you have a roof over your head, you have food, where you are, and you have control of where you are, and you're breathing and you're safe. Not everyone has that, but for me, I am appreciated of those moments where, I'm okay. I'm here. I'm situated. I think that was one of the scariest parts for me, is that you don't know where you are when you're lost.
Yeah.
You have no control. But it's also made me appreciate when I'm going through really hard times. And I think I saw that a lot when I was in law school.
Right.
And people that I know, friends of mine, reminded me of that, and reminded me,
You've been through some pretty, scenarios harder than this.
Yes. So I remember in law school, one of my friends, Brooks, he said, I think we were up at 1 a.m. still working, and he said, Alyssa, you survived being out on the land for 3 days.
Yeah.
If you can do that, this is one simple step. And if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't go your way, you can redo it, you can do something, but you're okay.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Yeah.
You're not, the world isn't going to end. Your life isn't going to end if you don't pass this exam.
Wow.
So it's happened a number of times where not just myself, but other people, because of my situation when I was lost, were able to remind me of, and it's affected them, I think,
Yeah, right.
Reality and like perspective kicks in, and I think that's really important.
Well, yeah, like you understand, through trial and, it's just, you understand, like, holy smokes, we can get through some things here.
Yeah.
And, like, so day 3, people, like, how did they find you?
Oh, gosh. So...
And, like, I mean, did they have, like, chocolate bars for you? Like, what was the first thing that they gave you when they saw you?
I still remember my first 2 meals after we were lost, actually. So
did you go to the Fro, or where did you go?
Okay, give me a second. So, the day 3, that was, like I said, it was the hardest day. And Lavinia was in front of me, and I would watch her footsteps, keep my head up. And I think at that point we said, if someone's going to find us, we need to be in a flat area,
right.
Because there's tundra and there's rocks in the north, and that makes it harder for someone to, like an airplane or a helicopter, to see you on the ground. So we said, if someone is going to find us, that we need to be on flat land. So we ended up going, Lavinia was the one that directed us, and she went that way, and it was probably about Tuesday afternoon, late afternoon, and that's when she started screaming. And I look up, and I see far, far away a skidoo going across.
Holy smokes.
And that's the moment when I thought, I'm going home.
Yeah.
I'm actually going home. Like, I couldn't believe it. I actually thought in my mind that I was going to die out on the land. I knew it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that skidoo go past, I started screaming, started waving my hands, arms, and we started running. Started running towards...
And skidoos are loud, like when you're sitting on, like they are, it's pretty hard to hear people screaming.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then we saw the skidoo go to a cabin, which we also didn't see before the skidoo came, because the land was so flat, and it was so far though.
Yeah, right.
And so we started waving, and the skidoo went to the cabin, and we started waving, and then we saw the skidoo the person get out. I guess he got out, and he started coming closer. And I just remember the light of the skidoo. The light of the skidoo, and the skidoo going up and down a little bit.
Right.
And that's the moment when I think I started crying. Like,
I'm about to start crying now.
I don't cry.
Oh, my God.
I didn't cry at all until that moment. And that moment was when seeing the light, it was a moment of relief, of disbelief, for sure, because I didn't believe it.
Right.
You're on day 3, a blizzard and 2 nights. So
that'd be a great title of a book, a blizzard and 2 nights.
Yes.
Like, wow.
So it was a hunter. It was he, and his name is David Solivinuk, and he jumped off his skidoo and gave us the biggest hug, and he was part of the search and rescue. Wow. But so he got off his skidoo, gave us the biggest hug, took us to the cabin, and that's where he helped us and paged. He had a satellite radio, so he paged his wife, and his wife called search and rescue, and the helicopter came not long after that. Called their family. That's when my grandmother was still alive, and everyone was at my grandmother's place, and they called my grandmother's place, and that's when I guess the celebration all happened. But I remember it was a roast beef sandwich she gave me, and I'm not usually like a roast beef sandwich. It's not my first choice. Yeah, but man, it was good.
It was good.
It was good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so after that, we had to go back. So the helicopter picked us up. And I think that moment when we sat in the helicopter, Lavinia and I, and just looking down at the land. And I don't even remember really having them. They happened at night, and so
like when you came back into town.
Yeah. They took us to the hospital. Lavinia was like released that night, and I was there for another 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
You must have lost a bit of weight, I think.
I'm not sure about weight, but my body was so sore. Like
Yeah.
it felt like I ran a marathon. It was very sore. I had windburn all over my face. I had frostbite and the 2 seizures.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. I had to recover from it for sure.
And again, just so everyone listening or watching understands, this was within your first week.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I think my parents they never really said it actually, but I think people asked me, "Are you coming back?" I was like, "No."
No.
There's it's a lesson learned, and I'm gonna,
Yeah, and I would think even like a lot of Inuit born and raised in Nunavut probably haven't had that experience.
Probably not, but I know some have.
Yeah. Like some have.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy.
It's a traumatic. It's a traumatic, and but it's also interesting how fast the body forgets.
Right.
And the mind forgets. But there's the opposite too. Like the mind also vividly remembers.
Yeah.
But survival mode is unique in itself, and I think the body continues to just do what it has to do, and the mind continues to do what it has to do. And it's such an incredible, it's such a huge event that happened in my life, but you continue to live. You continue to live your life as if, as if maybe that didn't happen.
Right.
But yeah, it's I think I'm fortunate to be able to have the support and the things that I needed to keep going from that.
My goodness. I mean that is So you mentioned that you were in law school at one point.
Yeah.
Obviously you've passed and
Yes.
and how when it was all said and done, how long did that take?
So, well, in order to get to law school, you have to, I think for the most part, you have to have an undergrad degree. So which is 4 years.
And yours was in
Ottawa U.
Sorry, but your undergrad was
in political science.
Political science.
Yeah, at Ottawa U as well. And I did that for 4 years, and that was before I moved up north. And then I got into the faculty of law at Ottawa U, and that was 3 years. And then you have to article with a firm or a court for 10 months, so about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to study for the bar exam, the Ontario, like whatever jurisdiction you're in. And I did it in Ontario.
How big is that book?
Oh, God. Well, what they do is it's 2 exams, 2 7-hour multiple choice exams.
Multiple choice.
So, multiple choice exams, 2 of them. So 2 days. And the books, it's divided into sections. So, oh my God, I don't even know how many, to be honest, thousands. Like, it's a lot, and it's condensed and
very thick reading.
Very thick, heavy. You're reading tax law. You're not reading anything fun. Like, I'm not even good with numbers to begin with, but I'm like, okay, skip. No, I'm just kidding. The bar exam really was probably one, the whole experience was totally different for me, and I really struggled during law school. But given, I think, looking at all of it, probably the bar exam, the Ontario bar exam, was probably one of my hardest moments, because I questioned my confidence.
Yeah.
The fact that I finished, looking back, I'm proud of myself and I'm able, but the fact that I was struggling at the bar exam,
right,
I think is an indication in itself that it's not easy, right? So yeah,
wow.
it was hard. It was probably one of the hardest moments where I definitely questioned my confidence.
Yeah. And so you grew up here in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Your mother was originally from which community?
She's originally from Inukjuak,
Right.
Nunavik,
Which is northern
which
Quebec.
is northern Quebec,
Yeah.
and she was relocated to
Yeah.
the high Arctic to Grise Fjord when she was 5 years old.
5 years old.
Yeah. So she was one of the original relocatees when the government forcefully moved those families from Inukjuak to Grise Fjord and also Resolute.
Like, and again, for anyone watching or listening who doesn't know how far away these aren't neighboring communities.
The distance between those is, you're looking at northern Quebec, and then you're looking at just under Alert is Grise Fjord.
Which is like the North Pole.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't know what the length of Ontario is, but it's got to be pretty close to that distance.
Yes.
You know, and so how many families were because they were put on a boat?
Yes, they were forcibly put on a boat, promised to be returned, which they didn't allow. They didn't provide any opportunities to. They didn't provide them any resources. They didn't tell them where they were going.
Holy smokes.
And these were members of government and members of the RCMP that took them on a boat, scary situation in itself, and then took them to Grise Fjord and Resolute. And Grise Fjord, to put some perspective, and it's right now it has a population, I would say, about 200 people. It's not even big right now.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. Inukjuak had plentiful wildlife, plentiful resources. Inuit are smart in the sense that they go where the resources are.
Yeah.
So there is resources where they were already living. And the fact that they brought them to Grise Fjord, a place where it's dark, pitch black, a significant amount of the year.
Like what, more than a month, right? I mean,
yes.
Least, yeah.
Like I would say probably quarter to half a year.
Yeah.
And you're in minus 60, minus 50 temperatures. And the resources are scarce. So the wildlife.
Yeah.
And so think about a hunter, like a parent that had to find, they've never been in that area.
Yeah.
There hasn't been people in that area. So the fact that you're putting a group of people there and saying, now you have to find your resources when historically there wasn't people there.
Yeah.
In pitch black, in minus 60, how can you're putting them to die. You're putting them there to die.
It's almost a miracle that they all lived.
Oh, yes. Yep.
You know.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. And I think about that, and I think about like my mother, and it's hard to envision because she was 5.
Yeah.
And I think about, she was an original, and she's the oldest of my grandmother's kids.
Yeah.
But you think of how strong and how amazing she is now, and then reflecting back on what they did to them. It amazes me how, again, strength of Inuit.
And also, you know, on the complete opposite side, like how terrible human beings treat other human beings.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I like so we had Mom on, and I remember like when I was a boy, as a teenager, hearing about all of these huskies that were shot, you know, by RCMP, to ensure that some families would never go back to the land or the areas that they came from.
Their resources.
Yeah.
Their livelihood.
And I was 18 when I found that out, and I thought, like, that's an outright lie. There's no way. Started asking Mom at the time. Mom said, yeah. She said, 5 years old, she was relocated. Yeah. And she said she remembers hearing the gunshots, the huskies being shot, and they were just told, you have to live here now.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, from my understanding, I mean, Arctic sovereignty was the major motivator. Yeah. And I guess, you know, playing as loose a devil's advocate as I can right now, Inuit would probably be the most likely people to survive in such a crazy... But to do that and not to honor your promises, hey, we'll be back for you guys, you know...
we'll provide food, a house.
Yeah.
You know,
like that,
some livable conditions, right? And it's...
it's
At what point are you as a government supposed to be protecting your people?
I know.
But you're actually doing the opposite.
Yep.
You're using your people to fulfill Arctic sovereignty or something that's not at the same scale.
Yeah.
Or should be weighed to get rid of your people.
Yeah, and like it just screams that like they don't hold the same value of life
Yeah.
as people who. And so that's really where I thought like this is outright criminal.
Yep.
And but also like to speak at like the resilience, like one generation from you to your mom.
Yes.
Right? Like one generation from mom to myself. And here we are, we're positive people trying to, make the bad better.
Yeah.
I think your story is a fascinating one because not even figuratively, like you found some hope, and I think it's such a picture of like what a lot of kids that we get talking to in these different communities is they feel hopeless.
Yeah.
And they aren't lost on the land, they're not, let's say, dying in that sense, but inside there's all kinds of things going on.
For sure, and it's based on, I think, systemic surroundings. Like we Inuit aren't born with, a loss of hope.
Yeah, right.
Any child is born with a potential.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have, for instance, so many of our youth contemplating suicide.
Highest rates in the country.
Highest rates.
Yeah.
Even for myself, I thought of it at one point in my life.
Wow.
And I finished law school. I finished my undergrad. I would say I'm
very successful young lady.
And the fact that I think even myself, I had one point contemplated it.
Yeah.
I think it's surrounded by how our systems are reacting or providing anything to Inuit.
Yeah.
Or to Indigenous people, right?
Yeah.
So I think we have to look at it as it's not an Inuit problem.
Right.
It's not that something's wrong with the family. It's not something's wrong with that individual.
Right.
What are we not doing to provide their basic needs to fulfill happiness and to fulfill a life full of, hope and of dreams?
Yep.
That's pretty basic.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you have on one hand someone who is, one of us successful and you still contemplate it. And then if you reflect back at, kids who are going through hardships, and it's something that I think our country really needs to look at.
Well, like when I was working at the Mummiesavik Healing Center, Canada's first and only Inuit-specific trauma and addictions treatment center, while I was working there, one of the counselors came in, showed me a Nunatsiaq News article, and it was of a 5-year-old boy in Igloolik. This would have been a Saturday morning, I think it was. 5 o'clock in the morning, this boy took an axe and was trying to break into the co-op.
Yeah.
Because mom and dad, had gone through something when they were much younger, and they had major alcohol dependency, and all the food was gone. And so this boy was just here in Canada, same time zone as here we are, Eastern Standard Time. The little boy here was really going through a tough time. And we see that time and time again.
Yeah.
24 communities we traveled to.
Yeah.
Greece Fjord's number 25. Yeah. And you see so many cases where people just feel like there's no option.
No options. And exactly. And I couldn't imagine if we are feeling that way where we do have some resources
here in Ottawa.
Yeah. How is someone at the age of 12 feeling in a smaller community where the resources are just not there.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can point fingers, but the fact that the resources, the basic needs are not there to address trauma and to address the reaction and what has happened to Inuit from that came and stemmed from government. I think.
Yeah, some of the most awful legislation this Canadian government has ever historically I think released was residential school, was to coin the term to remove the Indian from the child, to kill the Indian in the child. Like these are crazy pieces,
and that it wasn't very long ago.
No,
and that's the thing. And people are surprised of how when you see Indigenous people or Inuit struggling.
Yeah.
People need to understand that they're struggling for a reason, and you have to look at your history and your government's policies that was implemented and still probably are to kill and to kill the Indian in the child, or to kill Indigenous people.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why Inuit are feeling down or full of trauma.
Just feeling like there's so many odds against them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a major problem, and I don't know exactly what the solution is. I think commissions like what you've been working on, missing and murdered Indigenous women, trying to figure out what the heck is going on here.
Yeah.
Like, not to get too into it, but just recently in Rankin Inlet, there was a young lady who was brutally murdered and raped. And the autopsy came up a couple of weeks later and said there's no foul play. And this is our CMP saying in Rankin Inlet there's no foul play.
Yeah.
When they couldn't even recognize her.
Yeah.
And you just think hang on here, there's something going on.
For sure.
So I think that's really where, stories like yours and mom and your mom, where odds are against them.
Yeah.
In the most real sense, finding a way through it. Really have a way of, at a grassroots level, saying, the government's crazy, legislation is crazy, what can we do now?
Yeah.
For ourselves. And I had a question for you. What do you think, what is your hope for the future of, maybe we kind of take it two angles, for Inuit people, but then also for Indigenous peoples in Canada? What is your ideal? What is the dream?
Well, I think when you look at Inuit specifically, if you're looking at Inuit are very, they're self-determined people. And I think I want Inuit to be that's my dream. I want Inuit to be able to control their population, their lives, their everything around them, their education, because Inuit are very, it blows my mind of how smart Inuit are resilient, they are adaptable, and very smart people. And we have some examples right now in which Inuit are taking over self-governance systems, and I think that's how I want to see Inuit. I want to see Inuit take control back of what they already had.
Yeah.
And we are completely able, and we are doing it. So that's how I see.
Like Tugok Curley, I've had the honor and privilege of traveling with Tugok Curley, one of the founding fathers of the territory of Nunavut. There's a whole team of those guys then. Tugok grew up kind of on the land on Southampton Island, Coral Harbor, kind of the Nunavut community there. Yeah. This is a guy who never went to school. Yeah. His dad took him out of grade 3 or whatever it was. And when he found out as a young man that the federal policy was to remove Inuktitut language, was to kind of abolish that, he just started politicking, and a natural-born politician.
Yeah.
He ran his MLA in Northwest Territories, and this uneducated man, negotiated with NWT, with federal government to split the territory, split the resources, split, all of the benefits of it, so that Inuit could have their own land, their own government.
Exactly.
And you think, like, this is not a man
And how
who...
old do you think he probably was?
Yeah, he was in his 20s when this idea came in.
Exactly.
It took him 20 years to do it.
Yeah.
50, I guess he was in his 50s when it was finally
Yeah.
all said and done. But, like, you just think, like, hey, this guy...
Let's just take control.
Yeah.
Let's just do it. And he's one of many leaders who
Yeah.
have, in those years, Inuit who just did what they had to do, right?
Yeah.
And it was from the guidance from elders that said, this is what we need to do. We need to take back, these are the issues. Okay, go do it.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what they were doing, but they had guidance from their elders and they just did it.
Yeah.
And now I think, thank God for those leaderships and those people, because Inuit need to take back or not necessarily take back, but Inuit are capable and their leadership has shown that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, we just need to recognize that we're strong, capable people.
And we're united, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a strength that we need to look at for Inuit. Inuit are united people, and that goes a long way.
I got into a conversation one time with a First Nation guy from Alaska.
Yeah.
And he was like I was talking about Nunavut and how we have land and he got to talking about how it's very different in the Alaskan First Nation First Nation arena, in that they don't have the same
governance.
Yeah, and I'm completely ignorant in many ways to the Indian Act, the piece of legislation that sits in our government right now, that I guess is primarily for First Nation people. Can you shed any light on that? Because I understand that it is quite different from what we have in Nunavut as far as governance and the freedom to kind of...
Well, a couple things. Like the Indian Act it's a racist legislation.
Yeah.
It's misogynistic. It's
from a bygone era.
For sure. And it was in place to also kill Indigenous people, to put them in a box and control Indigenous or Indian or First Nations people.
Yeah.
Indigenous people. And it also took away a lot of rights of and it continues to do that, I would argue, is that it eliminates women to be rights of their own culture, of their own people. So when you eliminate women, you're eliminating a population as well. So
half of the population.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's there to eliminate the Indigenous population, in my mind.
Right.
And to control them and to limit them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's I was talking to this one former deputy chief of Cree Nation of Quebec, and we've known each other about the same time that we've known each other. Might have been 2010, and I seek his advice from time to time. Very kind of wise man. Yeah. He says he lives in the bush. He loves trapping and he has his trap lines, and just a man, from the land. Yeah. So we're talking about a couple of things and asked him a similar question, what's the future look like for us? What's the hope? And he started talking about the Indian Act, and I just thought, like, oh man, it's got to be such an oppressive piece of legislation. Yeah.
And I just wonder at what point is someone going to touch it?
Yeah.
And it needs, in my mind, it needs to go. It's done a lot of harm. I would say it limits the potential and the hope for Indigenous people.
I think, like, similar to people understanding that, like, the relocation days, residential schools, primarily, by and large in Nunavut, that was just a short time ago. Yeah. People are still alive from when all that happened. A lot of people have a hard time understanding, how soon ago that was, because a lot of people that I speak to were alive during all of that time. Equally so, I think people would have a hard time appreciating how difficult that piece of legislation or those types of legislations are, because they're just not under it. Yeah. And Yeah, I think as many times as people can understand how difficult it is for a lot of people here in Canada,
Yep, for sure.
the better kind of things go forward.
And you could, and this is always the hardest thing is as an Indigenous person, you almost feel like an obligation to educate people,
Yeah,
the
right.
Canadian public, and this is where I think reconciliation really comes into play. Is
Yeah,
that, and I always think, if you're going to make a change in Canada for Indigenous people to live a better life, you really need to educate your general
right,
population.
right.
And it's hard for a non-Indigenous person to swallow that this is our history.
Hmm.
But we need to accept it, and we need to accept it and to also take ownership
Yeah,
as a people.
yeah,
It's not to say to put blame on you as an individual, as a non-Indigenous person, as a Canadian, that you did this.
yeah.
No, it was our history. And
Right.
that's the thing where you see the ignorance and you see the non-acceptance, and that's what's hurting, I think, us moving forward.
Right, right.
People need to accept this truth that this did happen. It did happen like not long ago. And people need to educate themselves on that, because that's what's going to help our
Yeah,
future. And yeah.
yeah. I agree with that. Like the awareness aspect of it has to be the one of the first steps
For sure.
going forward. And this is probably like a 50 to 60, maybe 2 generations process of reconciliation and
Exactly.
figuring out
Yeah.
what where we find each other.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I love about Bill, who founded the charity
Yeah.
my wife and
Yeah.
I now lead, is he's in his 70s,
Yeah.
and he never did anything wrong, or wasn't. He didn't write any of the legislations that have really caused a lot of oppression
Yeah.
and trauma to. But he's just like, well, that's that's the past, and the past absolutely sucks.
Yeah.
Let's try and make something
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the travel that he does is to churches, and when I was coming with him, he would have me play the Inuit drum as a sign of
Yeah.
like, this is the part of the culture
Yeah.
that primarily the church said is evil. And he's like, shame on us for saying that this silly drum is evil.
Yep.
Like, that's crazy. This is a beautiful part of the Canadian
History and
history.
culture.
Yeah.
Right?
And so I think in those moments where, there is awareness being raised, it benefits everyone.
Yeah. And it's those individuals who are Canadians who are doing an active part in making things right.
Yeah.
Because it's also those people who are not educating themselves, or not playing an active role,
Right.
who are, I would say, are just as ignorant as people who are taking an active role and who did oppress Indigenous people.
Right.
It's like a bystander. It's
Yeah.
when you're not participating actively in your government's position, you're still actively oppressing.
Yeah.
So it's individuals like him that I think are a strong part of reconciliation, a strong part of making those changes of Canada's relationship with Indigenous people.
There's this one quote from a man. I think he was a Lutheran pastor during World War II. He was in Germany, and he was a German man. And when the Holocaust was going on, the Lutheran Church knew that this was happening. And these are people. These are pastors. They love people. They had Jewish people in their congregations, and one of his famous quotes, and he was ultimately one of Hitler's last acts while he was still living, was to have this man shot. They arrested him, had put him in prison because he stood up against the tyranny that was Nazi Germany, and one of the things that he said is that God will not hold us blameless because we have not raised our voices on behalf of the Jewish people. And there's something kind of haunting about that because like it's not good enough to be the silent majority.
Exactly.
You know, and that's really where like people like Bill, I really am quite honored by them because you know I think yeah, he never did anything wrong. You know, in fact, he's spent most of his life. If there was, if you could talk to one young Inuk teenager watching this right now, what would you say to he or she? In the context of kind of hope and overcoming, you know, in your real case, overcoming not only the elements in death itself, but also education and bettering yourself.
Right.
What would you say to that person?
Oh, it's so hard. But you know what? If I were to give any piece of advice or any, I'm not even old, but I'm thinking about a youth in my past situation, is that I was lucky to have people around me to guide me into the right directions of going to post-secondary education. Yeah. But if someone doesn't have that, if you don't have the people that you need, keep asking.
Yeah.
Keep asking, and pull someone aside, an adult, and say, I want to do this. I have a dream to go to post-secondary, to university, to college. I have a dream to be a musician. How do I make that happen? I have a dream to be a successful hunter. I want to do this. And you need to ask people, and I know that's not always easy, but being out of your comfort zone and doing things that you might not want to do will actually improve your life. And I've gone through situations in my life as a youth, as a teenager, as a young adult, where I didn't want to really present in front of someone. I didn't really want to talk to my professor, or I didn't want to talk to my teacher. I didn't want to tell my parents a certain thing. But when you do something that also makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable, you're going to thank yourself later down the road, because it will improve your person, who you are.
Yeah. And
you have to push yourself. You have to always push yourself. If someone's not pushing you, you have to do it for yourself. Yeah. And Inuit have always done it and will. And I think that's something that I've learned is, in order to improve who you are, you need to put yourself in the uncomfortable situations.
That was certainly the case for me at the Olympics.
Yeah.
Was I just, like, the whole way there, I'm like, what am I doing here? I shouldn't be doing this, But you grab life and you get nervous, and sometimes some amazing things happen.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, I love that. Alyssa, I love that. I'm so happy that you've had the time to come. We for those who don't know, we tried this previously, and at a studio. First time we've ever really, the Arctic Hope Igloo. We tried to get into a different studio. Didn't work. No, they never showed up to their job. Yeah, silly people.
Great business.
So yeah, I hope they do okay. But Alyssa, I'm so happy that we got to do this.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your story.
Yeah.
I'm happy you're alive, and
yes.
and really I think a lot of us can be excited about what the future looks like for you, and really you carry a powerful story, and a voice there that I think a lot of people need to hear. So thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And that's that.